Hello, welcome to this special Independence Day edition of The Big Fight. So in just a couple of days, the nation turns 70. Well, India is an independent country, turns 70. The nation, I guess, has been around for centuries and millennia. But it's always a good time on every Independence Day to try and take stock of how we are doing as a nation. And on the 70th birthday, all the more reason for individuals as for the nation. Always good to do a check of the health of the country. How are we doing? How have we been doing since 1947? What's the state of the nation right now? Where are we going right? Where are we going wrong? And that is what we're going to try and do with our panel and our great audience which is out here. We're trying to get what everyone feels. We'll also be going across to many experts during the course of the show. Shyam Benegal, Shashi Tharoor. We're going to get in Charu Sharma, talking about various aspects of it, of how the nation is doing. But let me just come up with some of the main points that I think we should be looking at in the period since independence. Obviously, there's a rise in India's global stature, the economy. Nobody can doubt how the economy is gained in strength. There is a certain strategic position out there. From the point of view of human development, perhaps halfway there. Major strides since independence, but certain areas still to be done. You can be very happy about the fact that life expectancy has gone up. You can be very happy about the fact that infant mortality has gone down and poverty has gone down. Could it be more? Yes, of course, we can always want it to go some more. Social harmony, one of the areas where there are questions coming up right now. We're going to see whether that is something which is continuing to be as strong as it always has been. And in general, the march of the elephant at India at 70. How strong is the elephant and how fast is it actually moving? And joining us to take us through all aspects of that, great to have Pawan Khera joining us from the Congress Party. It's always a pleasure to have you with us, Pawan. Mr. Balshankar is the member of the BJP Central Committee on Training and former convener of the BJP's National Intellectual Cell. Great to have you with us. Ashutosh joining us from the Aam Aadmi Party. Ajay Shukla is going to be joining us to give us some perspective on defense and strategic matters and India's position on the global stage and whether we can defend ourselves, and are the Chinese about to come in and bug us more than they're already bugging us. So all of those questions, of course. Sunil Alagh is joining us. Maybe can weigh in a bit on the economy. We've been hearing a lot from the economic survey, of course, but Sunil, it'll be great to get your point of view as well. And then, as I said, a range of experts we're going to go to during the course of the show. Why don't I start off by a starting viewpoint from you, perhaps, Mr. Balshankar. At 70, how well or badly do you think the country is doing?
In fact, today we are a very proud nation and we are doing very well. There are so many things we can be proud of. First of all, we have a democracy and which has been sustaining for 70 years, and smooth regime changes have been taking place. And in the last 3 years, we have found tremendous transformation in economy, in society, and also in politics. And what I would mention is that in the last 3 years, we have targeted programs for removing poverty, for housing for all, for Sajita Abhiyan, and a lot of things are happening, and this major chunk of these programs are directed towards the poorest in the society.
Perhaps you're setting the stage for us. We should probably look at this. I'm going to try and break this up. How have we been doing since independence? How have we been doing the last 3 years? Maybe we can take a look at both. Pawan? Let me get you in on that. Overall doing well as a nation.
No, you're right. We have to remind our friends that India was not born on May 26, 2014 as a country. We were born in 1947 as a country.
He may feel that a lot of the good things have only happened since they
Fair
came
enough.
in.
I grant him that, but I'll still counter. So I think the way we came together as a country, a union of states, is where a fundamental solution to all the problems that have come up in the last 3-4 years lies. We came together without surrendering, without compromising on our cultural independence as states, as regions, our linguistic freedom, our freedom to practice our own religion. Now, these are the strengths. That's why we were successful in creating this union of states. Food dependence, for example, PL 480 days, when you used to get wheat from America, the food independence, now that we are surplus now. So, institution building, giving right to vote to everybody, irrespective of gender, poverty, anything.
So
the middle class.
I'm sensing, as was with him, I'm sensing a vague political undertone. He's saying that last 3 years in particular have been great. You're saying that all of this is being built on a foundation, which is presumably the Congress and the rule. I think I'm going to come back and look at each of these subjects in turn. Ashutosh, how are we doing as a nation?
See, if we have a sense of history, we should realize in 1947 what state India was. There was massive riot in millions, lakhs of the people were killed. There was hardly an army, there was hardly a police, and there was hardly a state apparatus. And the people like Churchill and other international experts were talking about India cannot survive even for 5 years. And India survived not only 5 years, but it is surviving till now. So the vibrancy of Indian democracy, the robustness through which the people have expressed their viewpoints, and we are now a nation to reckon with at the international level.
Yeah.
I do not agree with him that it is only because of Mr. Modi or Mr. Because that India has emerged. I remember in 70s and 80s, India was just remembered as a country of snake charmers. Today, if we are considered to be the fastest economy in the world, and we are the most robust democracy in the world, it's because of the collective wisdom of India as a nation. We should recognize that there are a lot of infirmities, still there are many things which has to be done.
I think that's interestingly put, and let me just get both of you to say to weigh in on this. Look, I don't think anybody can doubt that as an experiment of the building of nationhood, here you have a country, 400 million then, 1.3 billion now, different languages, different religions, different regions, different types of people, surviving, thriving, growing, prospering, becoming a world leader, doing so in conditions of democracy, freedom, equality, all of those things, in conditions of a spirit of unity. We sometimes say unity and diversity as a slogan, but actually what we have achieved in these 70 years is almost an example which is unparalleled. And I think what Ashutosh is saying, I'm going to get you both to weigh in on this. He said all Indians should really be complimented for that. It's not just BJP government in the last 3 years or the Congress in previous years.
I entirely agree with him. I have not disputed with him on this subject.
It's probably the only time the BJP and the Aam Aadmi Party have agreed in the last 3 years. But that's okay. It underlines what he was saying, so I'm glad that you're agreeing with him.
No, but I also add that in the last 3 years, we have seen tremendous reform on the economic front, on the financial front, and also on taxation front. And this could have not have been possible earlier, and this was possible only because of the willpower that Narendra Modi has shown, and this was pending for many decades.
Okay, so all Indians deserve credit, but particularly Mr. Modi is what you are saying.
I think the willpower of the Indian people.
And you would say all Indians deserve credit, but particularly the Congress party.
No. Yeah, after all, it was Indians who elected the Congress party. We didn't get elected from Pakistan.
BJP
so, fair enough. So it is end of the day the people of India.
Okay, so with all of these self-congratulations taking place, Sunil Alag, let me just drag you in on the first aspect of what we are discussing. Then I want to go into various aspects. Let's look at the economy. Let's look at social cohesion. Let's look at sport, let's look at entertainment, let's look at culture, let's look at various aspects of it. Let's start off with the most obvious thing, the state of the economy. The fact is, 1947, where was India? After 200 years of colonial oppression, and some would say colonial loot, and I'm going to get Shashi Tharoor in on this point, because that's something which he, of course, has been speaking about at great length. It was really, India was one of the most prosperous economies in the world before the British came. They destroyed it. India's bounced back. Is that one of the biggest things that you look at in these 70 years, the economic resurgence and revival of India? Or are there other factors you'd point to?
No, I don't want to get into the political debate, but all I can say is that in 1947 when we began, it was more of Nehru and socialism. It was kind of a pink communism, if I could put the word in. Is that it wasn't red. So we had the family, we had 5-year plans, we had the state moving everything, and then we had to move today from an area of controlling everything to an area of empowerment. And that for me is the big change which has taken place in India, regardless of who has to take the credit. We moved away from
and that process
the
really
planning model of Russia
in 1991,
to the right model, and that's where we are moving forward. But we have not got rid of the license Raj fully as yet, so we have to move from controls to empowerment. I mean, maybe at that point of time, everybody felt that we needed to be controlled, otherwise this nation would fall apart. And today we've arrived at a stage where everybody in the younger generation wants to be empowered rather than controlled. And that is the big plus point that has taken place for India in the last 70 years.
Okay, so the economic resurgence of India, that's one point perhaps being spoken about. Shashi Tharoor, let me get you in on this, and I'm going to get you to keep your historian hat on right now, and because you've written a book on this, the fact that British rule really destroyed what was a very successful India from an economic point of view. People forget that in the early 18th century, the late 17th century, India was producing 50, sometimes 60, maybe 70% of global manufactured goods. India was riding the global economy like a colossus along with China. That was destroyed by the British. In the period since independence, we've had to rebuild that. And we've done so fairly successfully. You could argue it could have been much faster. Maybe we wasted 2, 3 decades or 4 decades, but eventually India has been able to rebuild.
Absolutely. And in fact, that's exactly right, because there was this dramatic decline over 200 years. And we started off in 47 with some very bad, very bad numbers, which I'm going to inflict on you. Way back in 1700, we were the most prosperous economy in the world, accounting for 27% of global GDP, the richest economy in the world. But by the time the British left in 1947, we were a poster child for third world poverty, down to about 3% of global GDP. 8.8% of Indian women were literate, which meant literally 1 out of every 12 Indian women could read and write. And infant mortality, maternal mortality rates absolutely sky high. 35 million people dying, totally unnecessary deaths and famines under British rule. That was the track record of the British. And in the 47 years till 1947, in the 20th century, our net rate of growth was 0.001%. Can you imagine? We weren't even at 1% growth of our economy. Then look at what's happened. Many of us are very critical of how inadequate our progress has been, but when you realize where we started in 1947, we've actually done not that badly in 70 years. If you just go back to the numbers I gave you all earlier, that life expectancy has gone from 27 now to 69. The literacy rate has gone from 17% to 79. The poverty line figures, it's no longer 90% of the population, it's 26%. Now we all feel that's 26% too many, but given where we were, things are very much better. Dramatic improvements in infant mortality, in maternal health, and finally, of course, a growth rate that for the last 25 years has consistently been above 6%, and for an entire decade was close to 9%. So we've really done a great deal in these 70 years to recover from where the British left us.
Shashi Tharoor, other than the economy, what are the other factors that you would be looking at when you're looking at the last 70 years of Indian independence? What really stands out for you?
Well, I think above all the entrenching of democracy. This was a country that didn't have democracy under the British. Whatever little we got, we had to prize from the reluctant grasp of the colonial masters right up to the bitter end. And yet, in these 70 years, we've got extremely strongly entrenched democracy, which no one in India would be willing to surrender. Secondly, social change and transformation. Who could have imagined that a Dalit woman could have been chief minister of the heartland of India, Aryavrat of UP? For 3,000 years, it was unimaginable. Mayawati has been chief minister 4 times. Who could have imagined a chaiwala's son becoming prime minister? That's again possible because our democracy has given us the prospect of rising above our economic and social circumstances. And that is an extraordinary transformation as well. These are things we, I think, appreciate insufficiently. On top of that, of course, there's been good things and bad things in our foreign policy, in our defense posture, in our image around the world. But I'll single out our soft power, because I do believe that the attractive things about Indian culture, everything from yoga to Bollywood, have actually placed us in many ways on the global map. Our openness to the world, our willingness to give to the world as well as receive from it, I think mark us out. And the management of diversity, there is no country in the world that has managed diversity of the extent that India has managed while staying democratic and free. I think those are significant triumphs to look back upon.
Ajay, let me turn to you on the more strategic aspect of it. India's position on the global stage. Now here I guess there'd be a bit more of a debate, because it's not as if in 1947 or the early 50s, India did not have a fairly strong position. Jawaharlal Nehru was one of the leaders of anti-colonialism. India had a fairly strong position. Sometimes we were wielding a bigger stick on the global stage than the stick we actually had, which was perhaps shown to us in 1962. How do you see India's position on the global stage then and now?
Well, as you mentioned, Nehru certainly had stature, but that was political stature. In military terms, you must remember that in 1947 itself, we got embroiled in a war with Pakistan over Kashmir. Pakistan invaded Kashmir. We were barely able to recover, a certain percentage of what they had done, and the rest still remains in Pakistani hands. A couple of years later, when China invaded Tibet, when the Indian army was given the question about whether they could intervene and help Tibet, the army chief was forced to regretfully conclude that he just didn't have the troops to it. As a result of that, Tibet remains now in Chinese control. Today, we're a very different kettle of fish now. Today, when China walked into Doklam, the Indian army was able to go there and confront them on behalf of Bhutan, leave alone Tibet. So even able to protect a smaller ally, the United States is actively seeking Indian cooperation to patrol the reaches of the Indian Ocean.
You could argue that some of our rivals and our enemies, if you can call them that, or let's say the threats,
adversaries,
have also become much stronger in these 70 years. The Chinese, far stronger today than they were 70 years ago. Pakistan didn't have nuclear weapons earlier and could never really hope to win a conventional war with India. Today, it does have nuclear weapons, so at least to that extent, it thinks it has deterrence against India. Despite that, you would think that India is strategically far stronger today.
Well, India is strategically far stronger because military strength rides directly on economic strength. You only can spend a percentage of what you make and earn and create in terms of countries' wealth. So India has done well economically compared to some countries, but less well compared to a country like China. So that is why the Chinese military has turned out to be grown. It has grown in more exponential terms, in greater bounds than the Indian military. But even so, the question that we always keep in mind as a poor country is what proportion can we spend on the military? And in that respect, I think we've struck a very good balance between development and creation of armed strength.
Ashutosh.
See what Ajay has said. I think we should realize that China has moved much ahead than us. But at what cost? China was continuously at war with itself from 1912 to 1976. Millions of people have died, either they were killed or they were starved. Thankfully, India had not to go through that. So, Indian achievement in that sense is much better.
That's of course a loss of liberty in China. But how many people here would really want that sort of prosperity without freedom? I mean, there
is no political freedom in China, even now. The issue is that democracy has its own pace, dictatorship has its own pace. Let's not forget, since Mao took over in China in 1949, till now, the Chinese state is basically a military state. It's an army state. It's a red army. So their military will always be powerful. And the
same is true for Pakistan, by the way.
I think the Pakistan,
India, China, you have a party which has an army. There you have.
Vikram, I think India as a nation is too big to get fixated by Pakistan.
No, you shouldn't. I completely agree with you. I think
there's no comparison.
You've got to compare with China, not with Pakistan. Okay, the economy part of it and the strategic and the defense and the military part of it. What would be your take?
In fact, talking about economics, the students of economics will know there is a famous Madison's law, in which in the early 18th century, India and China together had almost 60% of the GDP of the world, and this is a world study, and these two countries were continuously having this domination on world economy for almost 2000 years. So when the British left India, we were at the lowest 1.2%, and that was the case with China also, and till 78 we continued the same trajectory, and afterwards China leaped forward, and now we started again catching up. Today India is the fastest growing economy, and India's basic strength, some of the even American economists say that our strength is better than that of Chinese because we are a democracy, our economics, our statistics are all transparent, and Chinese we don't know, nobody knows what is the truth about it. And so India is catching up, India is emerging as a huge economic power on the world scene.
It's possible that this could proceed for a period of time, because there's a lot of people who are feeling that by 2030, 2040, India will be among the top three economies,
in the world, yes.
From an economic point of view. Pawan, let me get you in, and then I'm going to go back to some of our other
When we started out, there was hardly any middle class. We had a lot of poverty, handful of millionaires. right now, and we have a robust middle class which actually decides the direction of this country. Poverty is definitely come down, and the fundamental reason why we are doing well is also the idea. What was the idea of India? It was not that there is an enemy there and we have to come together and fight. Had there been no colonialism, I don't think England would have been one country, it would have been 4 or 5 countries. So it was a positive thing of nation building. Therefore we came together, therefore we've achieved what we've achieved. Without a threat, there is an external enemy. Pakistan, on the other hand, needs an India to be together. We don't need anybody else to be together.
It's an interesting point, and again underlining a lot of what has been achieved in the last 70 years. Without having to point fingers at anybody else, without wanting to fight with somebody, you've still been able to grow and grow in these conditions. There's no reason why India cannot and should not be among the top 2 or 3 economies in the world in the next 20 to 30 years, in a sense reclaiming what has been its traditional position through most of human history. Unless we mess it up, which is always a possibility.
I fully agree with what all the other panelists are saying, except I think I would like to point out one weakness that has taken place over the last decade is that earlier the country, the political system worked together towards everything connected with nation building. What we have seen in the last decade, and I blame all the parties, please, right now, BJP, Congress, everyone, we seem to be seeing a collapse of that taking place where everybody now opposes for the sake of opposition. So if we are to become a strong economic nation, and if we have economic policies which are not opposed for the sake of opposition, I think we will move much faster than what we've done so far. And we've got to understand this. This is walkouts and not having parliament functioning, and all that has to stop. I mean, we've actually degenerated in that area where there's been no growth. Actually, we've gone down. And this is where I think we need to pull ourselves up again and say, look, here you are, we were terrific, we want to become better. It's about time even the politicians we elect work together for the nation rather than just opposing each other for the heck of it.
Nikhil, dear, let me get you in on this, because another area where some people will feel has been the greatest strength of what India has achieved in these 70 years is what many of our panelists have spoken to. Growing, rising, developing, could have been faster, but still managing to do a lot of that, and yet doing it in conditions of, by and large, remarkable social cohesion, harmony, communities not at each other's throats, democracy, freedom, liberty, all of those factors. Would you agree that that's perhaps been one of the highlights which is as important as the economic growth or the strategic rise?